Now let us discuss the process of communication. So the process of communication is the transmission of the passage or the message that a sender wants to convey to his receiver. Now, the process of communication has elements. So may mga elements ang process ng communication. So we have here sender, receiver, the encoding process, the decoding, and then the channel or media. We also have noise and feedback. Now we will be discussing to you just one model of communication by Shannon and Weaver. So this is the most common, or this is the famous model of communication that has been used throughout the study of communication. We have sender. So this is very self-explanatory. Ano ba yung sender? The sender is the one who transmits the message. For example, now I am the sender of the message that I would like you to learn. So I am the sender. I am the one who transmits the message, and I am the one who sends the thought or the idea that I would like you to learn or to convey, to be informed with. So the sender is therefore the initiator of the message that needs to be transmitted. So I initiate the message that I want you to learn. Again, sender. It's very basic. Sender, the one who sends the message. Next, we have the message. So a sender cannot be a sender if wala siyang message na sinisend or ini-impart sa kanyang receiver. So ito ang message, it refers to the information conveyed by words as in speech. So it is the thought na gustong iparating ng sender. It's very basic. Again, message. Kung ano yung message, kung ano yung mensahe, kung ano yung thought, yung picture na gusto niyang i-picture out mo. So that's the message. It is the heart of communication. Bakit ba tayo nagko-communicate? Because we have message that we want our receiver, we want our or other people to hear from us or to know from us. So that is the very heart of communication. It is the message. Third one is encoding. So encoding is putting the targeted message into appropriate medium, which may be verbal or non-verbal, depending on the situation or time, space, and nature of message. In other words, it is how I want to transmit my message to my receiver. For example, now I am sending my message through verbal. So that is my encoding process. So it is my way. Paano ko ba gusto sabihin ito? So I would like to speak or gusto ko magsalita. So that's speaking is the encoding process. So it's the way on how I transmit the message. Another example is gusto mo siyang sabihan ng salita, or for example, mag-excuse ka sa teacher mo. So how do you encode your message? How do you express your idea na gusto mong mag-excuse sa class? So you write an excuse letter. So that writing or that letter, that writing process is the encoding part of your communication. So that's the way on how you would like to send your message. That's encoding. Okay? Now we also have the fourth one is channel. Channel refers to the way or mode the message flows or is transmitted through. So channel, ito na yung media or medium of transmission. It's how you transmit your or it's what you use to transmit your message. For example, maybe oral or written, and it may be transmitted through a memorandum, a computer, a telephone, cell phone. So, for example, now, the medium of our communication is the cell phone. I am video recording my message through this mobile or through my cell phone. So, that's our channel of communication. You also have your cell phone with you when you wanted to talk to your parents or your friends. So that gadget that you are using, yan yung channel of communication. So kung letter naman, yung paper and pen, yun yung channel ng communication. Pero pag kayong dalawa is face-to-face communication. Your channel of communication is the space that you are into. So, kung ano yung way or yung means para makapag-communicate kayo, yan yung channel. So, that's it. Then, the fifth one is the receiver. So, kung meron tayong sender, meron din tayong receiver. So, si receiver, siya yung from the word itself, receive. Siya yung magre-receive ng information that the sender is trying to say or trying to convey. So that's receiver. It is a group of person or it is a person who the message is meant for. For example, I am the sender, then you are my receiver. You, my students, are the receiver of the information that is meant for, or kung kayo yung mga gusto kong i-discussan. So, kayo yung receiver ko. And it could be a listener, a reader, or a viewer. So, it doesn't mean that a receiver is plainly listening or plainly a person that you are talking to. It could also be your reader. For example, you are writing a novel or a story. So, to whom do you write for? That is or those are your receiver. So, if may nagbasa ng sulat nyo, siya yung receiver ng information nyo. So, that's very simple. Kung sino yung mag-receive ng message, yan yung receiver. Okay, that's the fifth element of communication process. We also have decoding. Since we have encoding in the earlier element, meron din tayong tinatawag na decoding. So, it refers to interpreting or converting the sent message into intelligible language. So, it simply means comprehending the message. So, in shorter term, it is comprehending or understanding. Kung si sender is nag-encode, ang mo-decode pod is ang receiver. So, it's the way how he or she understand the message that the sender wants to send. So, kung naintindihan nyo yung discussion ko, that's the decoding process. Okay? And it's how you understand my message. It's how you understand what I wanted to say or to convey. That's decoding. So, the receiver, after receiving the message, interprets it and tries to understand it in the best possible manner. So, how you interpret my message, that is decoding. Okay? Lastly, we have feedback. Now, feedback is very important in communication because if there is no feedback, we would not know if naintindihan ba nung receiver natin ang gusto nating sabihin. So, dapat meron talagang feedback. Okay, feedback is the ultimate aspect of communication process. It refers to the response. Okay, pag nag-ask ka ng question, what is your name? And then, he would respond, my name is Jean Malabarbas. So, there is a communication there because the feedback that the receiver gives to the sender is accurate. Pero pag nagsabi siya, what is your name? And then, he would reply, I am 21 years old. So, that's miscommunication. There is no accurate or the communication is not successful in that manner. Kasi yung feedback niya mali sa gustong malaman ng sender ng message. Okay? That is feedback. Feedback is the final step of communication process and establishes that the receiver has received the message in its letter and spirit. So, pag meron kang feedback, merong response. Okay, pag merong response na natanggap, that means meron talagang successful communication. It is through feedback. Parang sagot lang yan. Sagot or yes, response. So, that's feedback. Let's have an example for the process of communication. I know you have understand it very well, but let us give a daily basis example of this one. For example, nanawag ang imuhang mama sa imuha. So, let's take your mother as the sender of the message. So, anay mong mama na, nak, panghugas og plato. Okay. So, that's very relatable. Nak, panghugas og plato. So, nadunggan nimo. Okay. Your mother is the sender of the message. The message is, nak, panghugas og plato. So, that's the message. Then, the encoding process is through speaking. Okay? She just uttered it through words. Now, your channel of communication is the space between you and your mother because you are just in your home. So, that's the air between you. So, madunggan lang man mo siya. So, that's the channel. Yung space na nandun kayo sa bahay nyo. And then, the receiver is sino? Siyempre, ikaw. Ikaw yung anak na gusto niyang sabihan na manghugas ng plato. And then, you started to decode, to interpret the message of your mother. So, makauna-una ka na, siguro daghan og hugason. So, I need to wash the dishes. Okay, that's the decoding process. You interpreted. And then, you give feedback. Anak ka, okay ma, manghugas na ko og plato, padulong na. Okay, so, in that way, nasabtan nimo, dunggan nimo na ay communication na nahitabo between you and your mother. So, ikaw ang receiver and then naghatag ka og feedback. Okay, that's an example of the process of communication. I hope you understand it well. Okay. Let us continue with the intercultural communication. So, basically, intercultural communication is the communication between cultures. So, there's an inter in the word intercultural communication. So, that inter means between. So, it's communication between cultures. So, we all know that in this world, or we have different cultures all over the world. That is why we have to be aware that we are not the only one living in this world. We also have different cultures to be communicating with. Now, what is intercultural communication? Why is this important? So, it is important because, or it is necessary to understand intercultural aspect of communication in order to facilitate the language appreciation and for successful communication to take place. So, we have to be sensitive of the other cultures because, as I have said, we are not the only one living in this world. There are a lot of cultures surrounding this world that we are living. So, to facilitate successful communication between cultures, we have to be aware of this intercultural communication. Okay, we have here 6 stumbling blocks in intercultural communication. So, when we say 6 stumbling blocks, this hinders or ito yung mga common mistakes in intercultural communication. First one is we have assuming that there is a universal way to communicate. As I have said, maraming culture sa world na ito. So, there is no universal way to communicate. Maraming ways in communicating. For example, Filipinos, we used to do handshaking. Okay, congratulate someone or we used to handshake dati, yung wala pang COVID. Pero sa iba, nagabow lang sila or they just nod at people. So that's nonverbal communication. For Koreans, they used to bow oftentimes when they pay respect, and that's different for other countries. So lahi-lahi, there is no universal way to communicate. So that is why we have to be aware of that one. Other people don't know how to say po and opo, just like us Filipinos. So that's one of the stumbling blocks in intercultural communication kasi iba-iba nga yung culture. We also have this language differences. Yes, iba-iba ng language ang different nations of this world. So, within any given language, there are differences in how to use it. Within any given language, there is room for different interpretations. Yes. For example, one word may be different for other country. Just like when we say nanny, okay, nanny. Nanny for other countries, it is katulong. Okay, nanny is katulong for other countries. But for other countries also, may mga country na ang nanny sa kanila is grandmother. So granny, nanny. Granny or nanny. Okay, so iba-iba yung paggagamit ng certain word in every country. Hindi naman iba-iba talaga, but there are circumstances wherein, or there are situations wherein yung isang word is different in different use kumpara sa other countries. So that's how language differs in every country, in every culture that we are in. So dapat i-assume natin na hindi talaga magkapareha ang language usage ng lahat ng country because there is a language difference. Okay, there is language differences. Now, the third one is nonverbal misinterpretations. Okay, nonverbal meaning those gestures, facial expressions. Okay. People from different cultures have different nonverbal cues, misinterpretation of observable signs such as body language and postures and movements become a barrier to effective communication. So, just like I have said earlier that some countries are used to doing bows, while others do not. So, magkaiba yung mga nonverbal actions ng different culture. So, we may misinterpret those if hindi tayo aware na ganun pala ang ibig sabihin nun para sa kanila. For example, some countries used to do this when they agree to something. 'Di ba sa Philippines pag ganyan ka na nonverbal action mo is ganyan, that means no. But some other countries use that one as a sign that they agree to something. Wow, just like that. Wow. But in us it says negative. So magkaiba-iba ang nonverbal interpretation ng different cultures. Okay. We also have number 4, it's the tendency to judge. Okay, we can have the tendency to approve or disapprove others because of the way they speak or the way they convey their message because of their own cultural background. So rather than trying to understand the thoughts and feelings of other person or group, we assume that we or our own way of life is the most natural one. For example, may mga cultures sa Philippines that the way they speak is very strong. So they say people say na ang mga waray, okay, mga waray are strong people, then isugon sila mag-istorya, isugon sila mag-action, and then we tend to judge that those people are strong person. So strong ilang personality without knowing na dili di ay. So they are sweet person or sweet people pala. So we tend to judge them on the way they speak, on the way they communicate with us. So that's not the thing that we must do because we must not judge others based on our own perception, based on our own culture because we have different cultures here. Okay? The fifth one is stereotyping or stereotypes. Stereotypes are overgeneralized beliefs that provide a basis on which we make sense out of what goes around us, whether or not they are accurate. For example, pag nakakita tayo ng mas elder sa atin or elderly, yung mga old people, we tend to greet them like, magandang umaga po, or maying udto ma'am, maying udto sir, even if we do not know them. So that's our own culture. But for other cultures, they just like they don't see anything. So walang pakialamanay. So that's stereotyping. We tend to judge others because there is a basis for us na dapat ganun talaga yung gawin, but for other cultures, hindi ganun sa kanila. So, hindi tayo dapat mag-stereotyping because, again, we have different cultures all around the world. Okay? Lastly, we have high anxiety or the fear. It's also known as stress. High anxiety is common in cross-cultural experiences because it is natural that we might feel tension or we might be scared of speaking towards other cultures because we don't know kung paano ba nila i-accept yung message natin or paano ba tayo magsalita in front of them or paano ba tayo communicate in front of them. So we tend to have high anxiety that becomes a blocking or stumbling block towards intercultural communication. So that's high anxiety. Now, we must be aware, it is very important that we will be aware of these 6 stumbling blocks of intercultural communication para ma-train natin or we would be aware of ourselves on how we could communicate to other cultures. Awareness of stumbling blocks is the first step in avoiding them, but it is not easy. Yes, it is not easy to be in intercultural communication. Now, the increasing need for global understanding gives us all the responsibility to give out our best effort. So we must be aware, we must be sensitive to other cultures, to other people, because it is the key towards successful communication. Okay, for communication to take place, we must be sensitive into their own culture. We must remember that differences or difference is enriching. It is normal to be a little stressed out and there may be some misinterpretations. So we must have patience in ourselves and for others. Okay, that's it for the intercultural communication. Now, if you have questions, comment down and I will entertain to that. We will see what are your clarifications and misunderstandings and the things that you would like to ask me regarding with the communication. Okay?